So I'll start. My grandma and great grandma actually started breeding Australian Shepherds back in the late 1960s. And when I was 14 years old, my grandma gave me Flint, and she told me he's my contribution to your college fund. So she said, train him and do competitions with him, and you can breed him, and that was kind of her thing. And so, as a 14-year-old girl, I got Flint as an 8-week-old puppy. And he and I kind of started doing everything together. I competed in the 4-H dog program with him. So we did like obedience and rally and agility with him, and he loved that. That was kind of where we first bonded. My family had a ranch, but we weren't really allowed to bring dogs on the ranch. And so he didn't really get the opportunity to do much ranch work. He helped me with my 4-H goats. He would like herd them around to help keep them in good shape for the fair. But that was pretty much the extent of his herding up until Rhett and I met. Um,
So Beth and I have been married for almost 5 years now, and as soon as we got married, we I always say the joke that Beth came with some baggage. She came with two Australian Shepherds, one of those being Flint, and so at the time that we were married, we were living right on the ranch, and I was working a lot on the ranch, and I would take Flint with me often, and Flint, he just picked it right up, and he loved it. He loves working on the ranch. He loves being with me, just even doing chores and then herding cows. And I love having Flint with me, and he loves being with me. We're kind of farm buddies, but he also works a lot with Beth on the ranch too.
Okay. So, oh, and so your our other guest just said hello. That was Oakley, your 3-month-old daughter. Welcome, Oakley.
Yep.
she'll join
So
us every now and then.
that's wonderful, wonderful. So the only member of the family that's missing is the one that we're going to be talking a lot about tonight, and that's Flint. So Flint is a bit of a celebrity. Can you tell our audience why?
Yes, so Flint won the 2020 Farm Bureau Farm Dog of the Year award. And so as part of that award, they came and they took a video of Flint working on the ranch with us. And that video went viral. So I think that everybody in a wide variety of audiences has gotten to see Flint and learn a little bit about him. So that's why Flint has kind of become famous.
That's great. What did that contest involve? Like, was there like a written application? Did you do a little video, like an audition video on your ranch? Like, what were the rules? Just fill us in on the contest a little bit.
Yeah, so as part of the application process, there was like a questionnaire that you had to fill out and kind of explain a little bit how your dog helps you on the ranch, what they do, a little bit about your dog's personality. We were asked to send some pictures and videos, so we took some videos of Flint working cattle. They also asked just for kind of some fun ones. So Flint knows a few tricks, so we added some of those tricks into the videos. So that was pretty much the application process.
Okay, and that was the 2020 Dog of the Year, correct? And so for our audience out there, if you just go searching for um, 2020 Farm Dog of the Year, you will find that really cool video, and it really is a nicely done video, and it's fun to watch Flint do his thing. I'm curious though, if if you had a ranch, Beth, your family had a ranch, but and you had Australian Shepherd breeding kind of in the family, but the two didn't cross. Can you maybe elaborate on that a little bit?
So it was different sides of the family. So my
Okay.
my grandma is on my mom's side of the family. My grandma, the one that started these working dogs, started breeding these working dogs, and then my dad's side of the family is the one that had the ranch. And so they had just never used dogs on the ranch, and they kind of were pretty much against it. So it was just not something that we did on our ranch. Not a lot of ranch. Some ranches won't use dogs, and but I think most probably do to some extent.
And Rhett, you mentioned that when you started taking Flint to the ranch after you were married, that he just kind of fell into it naturally. Um, what was the first thing you noticed where you thought, okay, maybe this dog's more than just company?
Well, what was really interesting about it is when we were married and we I started taking Flint with me. Flint was 7 years old, and that's I guess kind of a I don't know upper middle aged dog, and he just picked it right up. He was a very healthy dog, and it was very natural for him to pick up the herding and to work with me and to work with Beth. And we herd cattle on our ranch. Sometimes they're in herds of 100 cows, and sometimes they're in herds of 500 or 600 head. And he just picked right up, and I just feel like he's got this excellent natural ability to herd, where he doesn't put too much pressure on the animals, nor does he put little. He always matches his working ability to what the animals need. And so I found that very interesting. Just what Flint's natural ability, stuff that you just can't train a dog to do. Like I don't care how good of a dog trainer you are, you can't teach a dog stuff like that.
So the instinct was just there, and,
Absolutely.
and it was obvious pretty quickly that that instinct was there.
Absolutely.
Did you notice a change in his demeanor at all? I mean, um, did you start work mode that Flint would drop into when you went to the ranch? There's the at home pet mode, and then there was the down to business mode.
So Flint has a really funny knack, and um, so I have a day job and I work in an office. So when I go to work in the mornings, I put on my slacks, and in the mornings I walk out, I greet him. He walks up to me and he'll sniff my pants, and he can tell if I'm wearing my ranch jeans or if I'm wearing my office jeans or my office slacks. And if I'm wearing my ranch jeans, he gets really excited. Even if they're a clean pair of ranch jeans, he knows that we're going to go do some fun ranch work. And it's just something that he just picked up on, that he learned to do on his own, to smell my pants, and that would determine what we were going to do that day.
Yeah, I don't want to knock on Flint here, but my family can distinguish my ranch pants by smell from my
He's
work
been
pants.
keeping clean ones,
Yeah,
a
you can
Oh,
brand
you
new
mean
pair of Levi's that he just got out of the washer. He still knows the difference.
no
So
kidding. That's terrific. Well, that's a great time for me to kind of do what is a running theme in our podcast here, and that is ask you in your history with farm dogs, do you have a favorite farm dog? But that seems like the not the right question for today for Flint. Nor do I want you to have to go public saying that one of your dogs is your favorite. But do you have a favorite farm dog memory of Flint or any of your other dogs?
so I'll actually share one, and I will say Flint is definitely our favorite farm dog. So we have quite a history with him, and he's just like Rhett said. There's just no other like him. We have a lot of other really good dogs, different breeds of dogs that we've ran on the ranch, and there's just nothing quite equal to Flint. So, but I was going to share a cool story about him. So Flint, I remember one time we were called. It was a Sunday morning, and Rhett's family, where we keep our heifers, our replacement heifers, it's actually fairly close to a city. It's becoming more and more urbanized in central Utah. And I remember one Sunday morning we got a call from a policeman that our cows were out and they were going towards the main road. And so Rhett and I run over there. I'm pretty sure we still in our church clothes. Oh no, we changed out of our church clothes and we ran over there, and it was just the two of us in Flint. And Rhett was standing by the gate talking to the policeman, and the whole herd, we had about 150 heifers that took off running towards the road. And I just said Flint and pointed at him, and he took off running and stopped the entire herd and turned them and brought them right back into the gate. And the only word I said to him was Flint and pointed at the cows, and he knew exactly what he needed to do. So that was a pretty cool day.
That's terrific. Why is it always Sunday?
I
Uh,
know.
it always is. Yeah. Wow. That's terrific. Um, Rhett, so did you grow up on a ranch, Rhett?
Yes. Yep.
Did you use working dogs before Flint?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So
Working
so
dogs.
was there part of you that just wanted to say, "Hey, I wonder if Flint can do this"? Like, was there, you've seen other herding dogs work. Was there part of you that just wanted to see if Flint had it in him?
Yeah, of course. I was very open to having Flint join us on the ranch.
Hmm.
I didn't have a problem with it at all. So I
Yeah.
was excited to have him join us, join the ranch, join the
And
crew.
Beth, were you sold on it right away? I mean, this was kind of your pet, right? That you grew up with this dog a little bit.
Yeah, I was really excited. I mean, I had always known that Flint was bred to be a working dog. And like I said, he helped me like with my 4-H goats and he worked them and he was really good at it. And I just never really had the opportunity or the training to know what to do with all of his skills. And so it was awesome to finally have that opportunity to put those skills to use. So
Had you worked on any of the traditional training, pardon me, traditional herding commands and um, actions? Uh, I see you shaking your head. No. So, did,
no, no, we had not.
but so did you eventually say, okay, um, Flint is obviously has some instinct here and some desire to do this work. So now we need to get serious about that sort of thing. Did you kind of dive into the herding dog training then, or did you just say, hey, we've got this really good thing in front of us. Let's not mess it up. Let's just let Flint be his natural self.
Probably more of the latter. I had never trained a working dog, so we didn't really know all the working dog commands, the come by, away to me, things like that. Rhett kind of alluded to it earlier. Flint has a lot of natural intuition. So when we're working on the ranch, he just kind of watches what we're doing and he puts himself where he needs to be. He sees what we're doing, whether we're moving the cattle in the corrals and we're working them in the corrals or we're moving them through large pastures. He just sees what we're doing and he puts himself where he needs to be without us really having to tell him a whole lot. And we just kind of allowed that to continue. We didn't really teach Flint very many commands. About 3 years ago, we decided to do our first dog herding trial with Flint. And this was with a dog that had like, go get him and come back. And that was about the extent of Flint's commands. And so we went to an Australian Shepherd Club of America, we call it ASCA, herding trial. And they have 3 different categories that you can work. So there's cattle, sheep, and then ducks. And we entered Flint in everything. We were like, yeah, why not? Flint knows how to work animals. he, had, he had never worked sheep or ducks in his entire life until that day. And so it was really cool actually to put him on those livestock in an arena trial setting was the type of trial. And he did really, really well. It was really neat to watch him totally adjust his working style from like a very up close working that you do with cattle to working at a greater distance for sheep and kind of working. I don't even know how you describe how they have to work ducks, but it's a very different style of working. And Flint would watch his livestock or the ducks and learn how to work differently with these animals. And that was really neat. And I mean, like I said, it was his first time ever seeing them in those trials. And so he did all that without commands. So
Yeah. He really is like a jack of all trades. He can do everything, to that from, the just ranch herding to trialing to taking care of and playing with kids. He's really just an awesome, great all around dog.
What did you learn on that trial running Flint alongside other Australian shepherds, presumably some Australian shepherds that have been trained from the beginning to work stock? Was comparing them side by side helpful? Was it encouraging, discouraging? What did you learn from the experience?
it was actually pretty encouraging. It was interesting. I feel like Flint handled his stock very well and very similar to these other dogs. It did tell me, wow, if I'm going to do this, I need to train my dogs to have those commands because I can definitely see where they're useful. I think that it was a little bit hard for Flint to understand why we were taking him through 2 panels that are situated in the middle of a pen, in the middle of a pasture. It's not logical for a ranch dog who's always done logical work to do something like that. So I think it was a little bit hard for him to be like, why are we taking them through this? They're not getting anywhere. They're not accomplishing anything. We're not pinning them up type of thing. But So I did discover if I'm going to do more of that trialing work that we're going to have to put a few more commands on our dogs. So
Sure, and practice the game a little bit.
yes.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Yeah, most of the people that do those kind of run through the courses a few times with their dogs before, so the dogs understand the purpose of each of that. And Flint had, of course, never done a course before he set foot on that trial. So yeah, definitely more practice and maybe teaching my dog that sometimes you just take them through two random panels for no reason.
I'll add to that. I'll say that he impressed us and he impressed a lot of people at that trial because that was his first ever trial of that nature. And he impressed a lot of people, including ourselves.
And he was 10 years old at the time that we went and did that. So
Wow.
It was impressive.
What is Flint's working style like, and is it very typical Australian Shepherd? I mean, can you generalize both how Flint works and that how the breed works generally with stock?
yeah, definitely. So Aussies are what we call a loose-eyed breed. So if you watch a border collie go and work their stock, they tend to stare them down with their eyes and try to work them from a distance with their eyes and their presence, kind of. And so that's called a strong-eyed breed. And they're kind of they try to be intimidating with that, like making their stock feel like they're getting preyed upon. And Australian Shepherds are a loose-eyed breed, so they tend to work closer to their stock, and they move them with their body and with their presence more than anything. And so Flint is a very typical Australian Shepherd. He tends to work closer to his stock. He doesn't do that stare down, so he has a very loose eye when he's working, as they call it. They also call him an upfront breed, meaning that they hold their body in a more upright position instead of in that lower stalking position that we often see again with the border collies, just because that's an easy comparison. And so Flint does work very typically in that way. He tends to work pretty close to his stock and move them with his presence. And Flint does an excellent job of that. He rarely has to bite the cattle because they see him coming and he tells them move, and they move without him having to actually even put any biting on them, which we like because it allows for our cattle to be worked in a low stress way, which means they're going to gain better, be better producers, and not be as stressed every time we go out and move them. So we actually prefer that.
And something I'll add to that. So I feel like dogs, and especially Flint, have some form of communication with animals that us humans we simply don't. And we have other Australian Shepherd dogs that are younger, and Flint has a very calm demeanor when he's working any kind of livestock, and he can be around them, he can be close to them, and the cattle don't get worked up, or other livestock, sheep and ducks. They don't get excited, they don't get nervous or anxious. They just are very calm. And our younger dogs, bless their hearts, they're learning how to do that, but they haven't mastered that communication yet. But Flint just has a very calm demeanor, but he's also able to move animals that when they get mad, he can put them in their place and tell them, no, you're going that direction. But he just has an amazing communication with livestock.
Am I using the term correctly to describe that, like going back and forth in close proximity to the herd? Is it wearing? Is that the correct terminology? Okay.
Yes, that is. Yeah.
And that's pretty typical Aussie Australian Shepherd behavior, right?
It is, yes. So Aussies do tend to wear on the herd, and Flint does work that way. So he when we're moving a large herd, he kind of takes his own position. So let's say we're moving our herd of 600 mother cows. So Flint will we kind of each choose our position, and like without saying it, this is your area. Flint will just take an area and he wears back and forth and moves that portion of the cows that are in his area. And so, yes, that's considered wearing, and Flint definitely does that.
Okay. And outside of that trial you went to, has Flint had any experience with sheep or goats at all? Well, you mentioned that your 4-H goats, he worked with those.
So we actually, after that experience, we said, you know what, we want to start doing some of this. And so we purchased a few Dorper ewes, so they're a hair sheep, and we've worked him on those. And so they actually are here pretty close to our house, and we take the dogs out almost every day and we work them on those sheep. And this is where we're trying to, with the younger dogs, not with Flint because he's 13 now, but with the younger dogs, we are hoping to do a lot more trialing work with him. And so we are doing more of the trial command training, I always say. So
I see that Rhett got up there with Oakley, and that's just terrific. I'm sure you can answer this question for me, Beth. But did Rhett have any other breeds of dogs on the ranch when he was growing up? Has he worked with any others?
he's still here, so I'll
Yeah,
let him answer.
Okay.
so my dad, we've mostly had border collies, but we have had an Australian Shepherd and maybe another other dog in there.
Healer.
Yeah, we had a healer once. We had, but it's mostly just been those breeds right there. And go ahead. Sorry.
And when it comes to their working ability, just I know those are very small samples of the breeds, but do you have is Flint a favorite just because he's Flint, or is he a favorite because he's an Australian Shepherd, or a little of both, maybe?
So I guess I can actually answer that. We get a lot of people who like to kind of butt the breeds against each
Uh
other,
huh.
right? So like you're like either a border collie person or you're an Australian Shepherd person, and you can't be both. Like I don't know why people feel that way, but they do. It's kind of like the Ford versus Chevy versus Dodge argument. Um, and so I guess both Rhett and I, sorry, he got up with Oakley again, but both Rhett and I are very much of the feeling that each breed has its place. They were each bred for something very specific, and they very much succeed in what they were bred for. So, with Australian Shepherds, we like them because they are excellent herders. They work in the corral very well. My like Rhett said, they run border collies. His dad does, and the border collies are never allowed in the corral just because they work at such a distance that they can't do that close work in the corral. And Flint does an excellent job of that. All of our Australian Shepherds do. Whereas like the border collies, we talked about wearing back and forth. And I told you Flint kind of takes his section and he wears on that section. Whereas the border collies will literally just like run all the way across the entire herd, the back of the entire herd the whole time that we're working them. So, and they're doing that from more of a distance. So each breed has its place. The Australian Shepherds, we also feel like make a lot better family dogs. So we have ours that are in the house with us. Our little girl crawls all over them, and they love being part of the family. The border collies don't tend to like being part of the family, which is perfect for Rhett's family because most of them are allergic to dogs, and so the dogs are never allowed in the house. And so they love being barn dogs, and the dogs are happy with that. But an Australian Shepherd would not be happy just being a barn dog. And so every breed has their place, and they're successful in the different things that they were bred to be successful in. So
I know this is a stereotype, and that I'm sure there are border collie enthusiasts out there who would disagree with this statement, but generally, I've heard before that that border collies have trouble shutting it off. That there's no off switch on border collies when they're around livestock, but Australian shepherds may have that off switch. Do you find that to be the case?
yes, I do. Our Australian Shepherds definitely have an off switch, and so Flint will, if we're not working and we're out there with the livestock, he's happily just dawdling around, eating things and doing nothing. And as soon as we tell him to work, he turns it on immediately and starts working. And as soon as we tell him that'll do, we're done, then he goes back and he'll just lay under the tree while we're hanging out and doing stuff. And I think some border collies have that. So in the time that Rhett and I have been married, his dad has had 4 or 5 different border collies, and a majority of them don't have that, but a couple of them have been able to do that. So
Tell me a little bit about your family's long history in breeding Australian Shepherds. What I find interesting is that your family was breeding, presumably in Utah still. Your family was breeding Australian Shepherds. Were they breeding them for work for ranches, or were they just a general companion animal type of breeder?
so I'm actually from New Mexico, and that's where my family's ranch is. I came up
Okay.
to Utah for school, and that's where Rhett and I met, is while I was up here for school. So Yes, they were originally bred for working. I still have some pictures of my grandma and great grandma doing herding with their dogs, and they're at a herding clinic and they're herding pigs. And so I think that those pictures are actually really cool to see. Is some of Flint's ancestors are out there herding pigs, and so they were originally bred for that. My grandma actually still breeds, and she does a little bit more of the companion pet than focusing on selling them to breeding homes. When we have litters, we make sure that all of our puppies go to working homes just because they're so intensely bred to be working dogs that they get pretty bored if they're sitting at a home all day and never get the opportunity to work. So,
So you've kind of picked up the mantle there and taken things in a slightly different direction, where you're more focused on farmers and ranchers and um, producing working dogs.
yes. And just because we have to have working dogs on the ranch, for us, there's really no point in having a dog around that doesn't work. And so we want to make sure that every single one of our dogs is going to for sure have that instinct and drive to want to work cattle. So
Hmm. I noticed on your website that you may actually have a litter coming up, sired by Flint. Is that correct?
yes, we actually had one born last week. So we have 10 little puppies in our house right now.
Wow, that's great. And are they all claimed? Are they all spoken for?
Most of them are. We had 8 males out of the 10, so I don't know how the probability of that should have been really low, right? And so we have a few of the males that are not spoken for yet. So if anybody's looking for a good ranch dog, we have nice, pretty Flint males.
Which is
So
a fantastic time for me to mention that your website is Lore A Australian Shepherds
yes,
and Lore A Lora Aussies.com, correct?
yes.
Okay, terrific. And so
And
there's
we also
information
have
about
a
them.
Facebook page. I probably post on the Facebook page more than I do on the website. So
And they can just search for Lore A Australian Shepherds and they'll find you on Facebook as well.
yes, yes.
Okay. So
So
what does the future hold for your both your ranch and your breeding operation and for Flint?
so first, Rhett brought me a puppy. If anybody wants to see an adorable little Flint puppy.
Oh my
So
goodness, you just sold the rest of your puppies right there. I don't have a giant audience, but you're going to get 8 out of 10 people listening to this calling you.
we're actually keeping one from this litter. So we plan to keep Flint's replacement since Flint's getting old and kind of getting retired. We're actually going to keep a little male out of this to be our new Flint, hopefully. So
That's really exciting.
yeah, but you were asking about the future of our operation and of Flint.
Yeah, and what maybe what your goals are for your breeding operation. You know, how many litters do you have a year or over any stretch of time, and how many litters do you expect to have in the future? And what are your expectations for what those breedings need to be?
Cool. Yeah. So we currently have Flint and then 2 females that work on the ranch and of course are part of our breeding operation. And so we breed both of those females approximately once a year. I say approximately because it's actually been 2 years since we've had a litter, and we'll probably have a couple litters this year. So we don't like consistently say every female has to get bred right now or a certain number of times a year. It just kind of depends on where we need them and the timing. Fall is pretty busy for us, so we try not to breed them in the fall because we like to use our dogs, and so we can't have them out there taking care of puppies um, when we need to be having them to work on the ranch. And so their first job is ranch dogs, and their second job is to help carry on good working Australian shepherds. So yeah, we plan to continue doing that though. We have the mother of this litter is about 6 years old, and then we have a younger dog that's about 2. Um, and so we plan to continue breeding them and working them. We do want to get more into the dog trialing world. So that's kind of our plan as well with the younger dog. We start doing some trialing. Um, I'm actually in vet school right now, so I'm very busy during the year And so I don't know that we'll start any trialing until after I'm done with that school. So, but that is our plan. Rhett and I plan to continue working on the ranch, and it's his goal to one day be a rancher full time instead of having a day job. And so that's kind of the end point for us, is to be able to ranch full time and me be a veterinarian and have our dogs working on the ranch with us every day. So
As a guy who has bought a few working dog pups, and as well as bird dogs, hunting dogs, like when I hear you say that you are producing enough litters to basically make sure you keep yourself stocked in working dogs for your own ranch, like that's the kind of breeder I want to know, and that's the kind of place I want to go to get a puppy, because I know that that litter was bred to produce for the owner and for people who really rely on that dog to do the work. And especially in a world where, there's this fork into between working and show and companion. When I hear that a breeder says, well, I needed a pup, so we had a litter, like that's just, there's no better way to make sure that you're staying on that working track as opposed to straying into more of the show or companion world.
yeah, and especially I feel like with Australian Shepherds, that's becoming kind of an issue. We have a very distinct difference between our working Australian Shepherds and our show slash companion Australian Shepherds. They're almost two different breeds at this point, in their demeanor and disposition and the way they're built, even their conformation. They're just totally different dogs. And I get a lot of ranchers who will tell me, oh, I had an Australian Shepherd and it would never work on the ranch. Well, of course, they went and bought one of those Australian Shepherds who's purposely been bred to be a companion dog, and they're breeding the instinct out of the Australian Shepherd in that instance. And so I think that it's important for people to know that there are working Australian Shepherds out there. You just have to find the right breeder who uses their dogs and works their dogs and is breeding for that specific instinct and drive.
Are there any telltale signs, any giveaways when somebody's out there looking for a puppy? This is selfish on my part because I'm going to be looking for a pup sometime in the future. Are there any giveaways or red flags that might let you know that this person's not really a serious working dog breeder?
Yeah, so I think that it's really important for buyers of working dogs to ask for either pictures or videos. Now, of course, I know it's hard for ranchers to take videos while they're out there working their dogs, but we managed to do it, and we're hauling around a baby and doing 50 million other things, and we still managed to take videos of our dogs working. And so I think that it's important to ask for things like that so that you can actually see the dogs working, and to ask if both parents do actually work regularly. Because I think that frequently people just say, oh yeah, I have a working dog, and of course he works stock, even if he really doesn't. He goes and chases their horses and they consider that working stock. That's not a working dog. So I think it's important to talk to the breeder and ask for specifics, whether that's through pictures or videos of them actually working.
And I suppose farm raised or ranch raised, or raised around sheep or raised around cattle is not the same as a working dog, right?
Definitely not. No.
Yeah.
Actually, I feel like these working dogs, if they're just around the stock, it just drives them crazy if they're never allowed to work them, because that natural instinct is telling them to work. So they need to actually be working dogs that are used on a real operation, in my opinion. Or there are a lot of people who do trialing work, and I think that if if you have a dog who's been able to successfully go out there and compete in the trial world, then you would assume that they have good instinct as well.
Do you think it translates from trial to ranch? Because there are some people who actually that's all they do is trial. That's their hobby. That's the main thing they're interested in. Um, Not necessarily do those trialing dogs translate to work on the ranch, but can puppies from those trialing dogs, is the instinct the same? Do you think, and can it translate to a real working environment?
That's a very touchy subject in the working dog world.
Yeah.
But I personally think it kind of depends on the dog. Um, I don't think that it's the same type of dogs that go out there and are ranch dogs on a large operation like ours. I don't think that those are the same dogs that go and successfully trial, because it takes a different mindset from the dogs. So I mentioned earlier that Flint's a very intuitive and independent worker. He doesn't take a whole lot of commands from me because he doesn't need them. He's able to look at a situation while we're working cattle and respond in a way that's helpful to us. Whereas I think a lot of trialing dogs, and whether that's bred into them or they're trained that way, they they have to, they're almost micromanaged by their owners. And so they need to be told what to do every second or they don't act. And that's impossible on a ranch to have a dog like that, because I don't need to be worrying about where my dog is or worrying about what I need to tell my dog to tell him where to be. I don't have time to do that when I have 600 mother cows that are breaking back trying to get back to their calves when we're weaning them. I need to have a dog that just gets in there and helps me without me having to tell him where to be, and he doesn't respond without commands. And so I think that they are kind of different dogs. And I think that we're also breeding away from that, where people focus on only purchasing puppies from a dog who has a certain herding title rather than one that's been proven on the ranch.
A parallel for me in my experience is retrievers, hunting retrievers, that in order to win the trials, they were inadvertently or maybe purposely breeding for dogs that could withstand the intensity of the training, that they could train for long periods of time fairly intensely with a fair amount of stress and not cave, not or get bored. And
Right.
so, rather than a dog that could think for itself and use its own nose and that sort of thing, and so for many just average hunters, the typical guy who goes out and hunts a few times in a season, the the shortcut that we would fall back on is, are there champion titles in the pedigree?
Yeah.
And there's some translation there, but it's a fascinating topic for me to know, to discuss whether that really translates and really gives you the best everyday working dog. Um, but I assume that for you, the focus will continue to be on that working dog that can think for itself a little bit, even as you get into trialing a little bit more.
Yes, definitely. And I think that that's an excellent comparison that you had there with the retrievers. Um, and I think that there is a lot of pressure in the competition dogs, but it's a different type of pressure. I mean, if they mess up, then oh dang, they didn't make it through the course, right? Whereas like if we mess up, then now we have to go another 5 hours trying to regather all of our cows that just got away. And so it's a different type of pressure and it's a different type of stamina. I mean, we're out there and it's 98 degrees and the dogs only see water every mile, and they're having to have a whole different type of stamina and pressure on them than those trialing dogs will. And so I think that it's definitely different dogs, and I don't know that it necessarily translates over between them. So, and I think I forgot your question that you asked me in answering that.
I did too, but I love that answer, so that's
Okay,
good enough.
perfect.
Um, do you view the dogs as a helpful and interesting wrinkle that just adds kind of a point of interest and some enjoyment and satisfaction to the ranch work, or do you view the dogs as essential to your ranch work?
I would say that they're essential. So there's only like one of us that'll go and move the herd of cows, whether that's, so we keep our cows in kind of two different groups. We keep all of our mother cows together. So those are all the cows that have had one or more calves. And then we keep our replacement heifers in another group. And so sometimes we'll go by ourselves to move those replacement heifers, which are about 100 to 150 head, depending on the year. And we'll also go by ourselves sometimes to move that entire herd of 500 or 600 mother cows. And it's essential for us to have a dog that can help us get the job done, because sometimes the cattle are real eager to move to the next pasture and to do what we want them to do, and sometimes they're not, and you have to have a good dog that's able to help you accomplish your purpose. We love having them along. They make it more enjoyable to have a dog to talk to when you're by yourself, but it's also essential to have a dog there to help you move the entire herd. We wouldn't be able to get it done without them.
One of the things that I'm concerned about as I get closer to getting my first herding dog pup is I've got lots of chores and tasks that need done, but I don't know that I have work for a pup to do or for even a grown dog to do every day. I'm worried that I don't have enough to engage them. What's your experience? Does Flint and the other dogs that you work with, do they go to the ranch every day? Do they have some work to do every single day, or are there days when they just need to lay back and be okay with that?
We have both. So I mentioned that I'm in vet school right now. And so that actually puts us to where we don't live directly on the ranch at the moment. We're a couple hours away from it. And it's been this way throughout my entire college career. Of course, it's taken a lot of years of college for me to get here. But so the dogs, they go through stages in their lives where they are working every day and where they are only working on weekends when we get back to the ranch. And I feel like our Australian Shepherds do great at both. And so we have them where, like I said, during the week, they just kind of lay around and hang out with the family. And then on the weekends, we go and work. And we've also lived at times where we're literally out working cattle every day, whether that's just moving fence or running the feed truck. I found the best thing that helped my dogs with that is when on the days when we're not able to go work is I teach them, I do a lot of other mental stimulation. So I mentioned earlier that Flint knows what kind of a lot of funny tricks. Well, he learned those during my college days when he didn't have ranch work to do. It's really important to keep their mind completely or constantly stimulated, because they're very intelligent dogs. And if they're bored, then they're going to use that intelligence to do things that you probably don't want them to do. And so I like to keep them mentally stimulated all the time. We also keep ducks in our backyard. So right now, like I said, we don't live on the ranch, but we have ducks in the backyard. So I'll go out and just have them work the ducks, just as kind of a release for them. And then we also keep sheep just about a block from our house. So
Do you think that the dogs get a different level of satisfaction working from different types of stock, or do you think they recognize the difference between real work and training?
um, I guess I'll answer the first question. I do think that they get a different level of satisfaction from work. My dogs, based on their pedigree and their bloodlines, are bred to be cattle dogs. And I can tell that they love working cattle so much more than they enjoy working sheep or ducks. They're successful and they enjoy working the sheep or ducks, but that's not where their heart is. You can just see the fulfillment after a long day of cattle work in those dogs. And so they absolutely love it. Um, and then what was the second part of your question?
Um, yeah, the difference between training and actual
Oh yeah.
work. Do you think that that there's a difference in satisfaction between those also?
Yes, there definitely is. So I again, I think that our dogs know. Ours are bred to be ranch dogs, and so I mentioned earlier that the trialing kind of forces you to be a little bit of a micromanager of your dog. And I think that they know when I'm going out there and practicing for the trial work, and they're like, oh, here she is micromanaging me again, right? Telling me what I need to do when I know what I need to do. And so I think that they do know the difference. And we go out on the ranch and I just don't say anything to them, and they fall into line with the rest of the ranch hands, whether they're people on horseback or other dogs. So
Well, that is a great place for us to wrap up. I want to just one more time mention all of these web links will be noted in the show notes. I want to point out that you can find lower A Australian Shepherds at LORA Aussies, lowerAaussies.com. And also, we need to point out that the Farm Bureau is right now
yes.
wrapping up their contest for the Farm Dog of the Year 2022. So Until July 2nd, you can go to fb.org/farmdog and you can enter your dog to be the farm dog of the year. Enter the contest. So that's an exciting opportunity out there. If you think you have a Flint-like dog in your world, maybe you should consider entering that contest. And again, that's FB as in farmbureau.org/farmdog. And again, we'll put those links in the notes. On our way out the door here, Beth and Rhett and Oakley, is there anything that you'd like to, any last anecdote you'd like to tell us about Flint?
Just that he's a wonderful dog. It's a little bit bittersweet going through all this with him at such an old age. He's very, very healthy, as Rhett mentioned, and we hope to have him around for many more years. But Flint's been with me since I was 14 years old. He's been with me through my entire life and all the different life changes that I've had happen. And so it's kind of a little bit bittersweet to be doing this while he just turned 13. And but it's also kind of neat because, like I said, I'm keeping one of his puppies that's going to carry on this for the rest of our lives. So I just there's nothing that replaces a good farm dog and a good ranch dog to be out there helping you get your work done. So, and Flint's also here. He wanted to say hi. Let's see.
Oh, on the table.
He said, "Nope, I'm done."
He's done enough of these things.
Yeah.
Well, Beth and Rhett and Oakley, it's been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. Good luck with your endeavors with vet school, with the ranch, and with the litters and the breeding. It's just been a lot of fun, and I wish you all the best.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you having us on your show.
My pleasure. Take care, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.